Good afternoon, Cedarfield. How is everyone doing today? I am Karen Wilder. I'm the dietitian here at Cedarfield. Eddie and I were just talking about how things are ramping up. The holidays are here, whether we like it or not. So we're getting busy. All the parties are being planned. So it's time to buckle up and get ready for crazy time. But it's exciting as well, and it's fun, and it's always nice to have this time of the year to kind of allow ourselves to take a break from the day-to-day and enjoy friends and families and gatherings and celebrate and be grateful and thankful. Then next thing we know, it's the new year, and we're looking forward to a clean slate. So anyway, so moving on to our topic. So in the spirit of Alzheimer's Awareness Month, which is the month of November, we had our big Alzheimer's walk to end Alzheimer's disease earlier in the month. And, we've had activities kind of throughout the month to kind of keep the awareness going. We've done a big fundraiser here, which is amazing, for Alzheimer's research, so I figured it only makes sense that we would talk about nutrition and how it plays a role in brain health, memory, and cognition, and then also talk a little bit about nutrition strategies and interventions for someone that has dementia or Alzheimer's. All right, so as we've said a lot of times on this show, if you watch it often enough, you know that if we're talking about a specific thing, like maybe eye health or skin health or heart health, etc., we're going to talk about a certain set of vitamins and minerals and nutrients. And typically, if that sounds repetitive, well, then that's for a reason, because anything that is a good, healthy vitamin or mineral or nutrient, if it's good for one part of our body, more than likely it's good for all the parts of our body. Like, it's very rare that there's going to be one thing that's like, oh, this is really good for your eyes, but it's terrible for your skin. So, the vitamins and minerals and nutrients that we take in through our food, our healthy food, they benefit us from head to toe. So today we'll be talking about the head and what's inside of it, our brains. But there are a couple of specific foods that have been identified as particularly helpful in preventing dementia and Alzheimer's, and also slowing that cognitive decline and improving your memory. So not everyone is going to develop Alzheimer's, but it's not uncommon to develop some sort of dementia to some degree as we get older. Our body just kind of naturally starts to deteriorate a little bit, and our muscles deteriorate, and all kinds of stuff. So our brain kind of is the same. And some people are just blessed with great genetics and it doesn't affect them as much, and other people unfortunately develop symptoms of dementia really early. So it's all over the board. The role that genetics plays in it is, there's nothing we can do about that for the most part. Maybe in the future things will change, but if it's in your genes, then there's not a lot you can do. But the research has shown, specifically with dementia, that there are things that we can do from a nutrition standpoint that will, in fact, kind of slow that cognitive decline if you're kind of predestined for it, or maybe delay the symptoms a little bit, despite your genetics, which we can't really fight. So, which isn't always the case with other disease processes. We have a little bit of armor here to protect our brains and fight that inevitable thing. All right, so what are those, magic foods that we can get plenty of to help protect our brain and our memory and our cognition? So, vegetables. There's nothing that bad that can be said about vegetables unless you just don't like to eat vegetables. But vegetables are packed with vitamins, minerals, water for hydration, fiber, and antioxidants. And that's kind of the name of the game here with brain health and preventing dementia is the antioxidants that we get in fruits and vegetables. So you've probably heard me say before to focus on eating foods that are very brightly colored. And the reason for that is the chemical compounds in the foods that are causing those bright colors are also full of antioxidants, which are good at protecting our brain and for lots of other things, especially for heart health and decreasing your risk of cancers and things like that. The ones that are particularly good for our brains are cruciferous vegetables such as broccoli and cabbage, and also the dark leafy green veggies like spinach, kale, greens, all those collard greens, things like that. So don't shy away from your broccoli and your spinach. Those are very beneficial to your brains. All right, so then also kind of in the same vein are fruits. Normally we talk about fruits and vegetables together, but there are the fruits that are particularly good for our brains. Again, it's the pigment, the chemical compounds that are causing the pigment in these fruits also has this antioxidant property that is good for preventing this neurodegeneration. So the ones in particular for our brains are berries and cherries. So those really bright blue and red fruits. So blackberries, strawberries, blueberries, cherries, all of those good things. Interestingly enough, that is one of the things I get the most requests for from you, the residents. People call me for suggestions for the dining room or whatever. I get a lot of suggestions or requests for berries and things like that. So I know sometimes we're a little limited from budgets, and I always let Chef Tyrone know. So I know he hears your requests and he tries to get those things when he can. But now we have some evidence to prove that he should definitely try to get those in for us because they're good for our brains. Okay, so next is fish and omega-3 fatty acids. So this is probably not a surprise. Most people are aware that fish is good for our brains. People take, fish oil supplements sometimes. So the specific part of the fish that's good for our brains is the omega-3 fatty acids. And there's one in particular. It's got a really long chemical name. I won't try to pronounce it, but the abbreviation is DHA. So this DHA is a specific type of omega-3 fatty acid that is particularly good for our brains. And this is very prevalent in fish. So especially salmon, trout, oysters, and tuna. We have, in on our employee dining room, we had salmon today. I can't remember if Tuesday or Wednesday is salmon night in the Cedar Grill. So Otis does a great job of preparing all the different types of salmon. So I recommend you take advantage of seafood night in the dining room and get that salmon and give your brain a little boost. So the recommendation for seafood to be beneficial for your brain is 8 ounces in 1 week. So, a typical, sometimes in the dining room they give us these really large portions, but really 4 ounces, which is kind of, the size of the palm of your hand, maybe a little smaller, is about the size of 4 ounces of fish. And so if you had that twice a week, then you'd be set, you'd be covered. So, and fish is a great replacement for red meat, which is something we should be limiting for our heart health. So, if you're inclined to one day go in and have a steak or a burger, maybe take a moment to think, maybe, today would be a good day to swap that out with a nice piece of fish, maybe some trout or something like that. I know there's other good fish on the menu in the Cedar Grill, so I would take advantage of that. We have good sources of fish here, and they're prepared very deliciously. Anyway, it's also a good source of lean protein, which is something that's very vital to to older adults. So don't shy away from the fish. If you are not a fish eater, and I understand that, I am from the South and I love seafood, so I don't understand it from that respect, but I know a lot of people don't enjoy fish sometimes. So if you are one of those folks, you can also get your omega-3 fatty acids from things like flaxseed, chia seeds, walnuts, and so those are things that you could easily kind of just sprinkle on the top of your food. And so, a lot of times I kind of might have flaxseed or chia seeds ground up, and then you can just sprinkle them on your cereal, on a salad, all kinds of things like that. So there's easy ways to get those. And you can also take a supplement. There are, fish oil supplements. There's also plant-based supplements that are derived from algae that can also provide those omega-3 fatty acids. So like I said, also walnuts are excellent brain food for us. They're high in the DHA, and they also have those good healthy fats, things like that. So don't shy away from walnuts. They're also high in fiber, and they're a great snack because they kind of keep you full. They are calorie packed, so if you are kind of watching your calories, don't overdo it. Kind of put a limit on your walnut intake there. Okay, so moving on. If again you watch this show, you are probably familiar with the Mediterranean diet and all of the benefits that the Mediterranean diet has to our body and our health and good nutrition. I talk about it all the time. I recommend it. It's an excellent, well-rounded, healthy diet. It's not restricting any types of foods or groups of foods except for the ones that aren't as healthy for us. But it's nice and well-rounded. Anyway, there has been plenty of research to show, like I said, specific to other disease processes like our hearts and things like that. It also is very beneficial to our brain health. There is also another diet similar to the Mediterranean diet called the DASH diet. So this stands for Dietary Approach to Stop Hypertension. And hypertension is high blood pressure. So this is a similar diet to the Mediterranean diet. So the Mediterranean diet, just to back up a minute, promotes lean proteins such as fish, whole vegetables and fruits, whole grains and lots of fiber, nuts, seeds, beans, and healthy fats like olive oil is always very closely associated with the Mediterranean diet. So the DASH diet is very similar, and it's promoting a lot of the same things: high fiber, fruits and vegetables, lean proteins, but it also focuses on foods that are rich in calcium, potassium, and magnesium, and it's also limiting saturated fat and added sugars, but of course sodium. Sodium is one of the biggest contributors to high blood pressure. So naturally it is a diet very low in sodium. And kind of going back to calcium, potassium, magnesium, you're going to get plenty of these things if you are getting lots of fruits and veggies and fiber and things like that. So those are two great diets. Again, the DASH diet is kind of specifically geared towards people with high blood pressure, but research has shown that it has also been beneficial to our brain health and kind of slowing cognitive decline and neurodegenerative diseases. So then someone came along and took those two diets and combined them. Again, they're already very similar, but they wanted, since Mediterranean diet is it's just kind of a lifestyle diet that people in the Mediterranean region follow, but we've kind of adapted it as something we should follow here for good nutrition. The DASH diet was designed kind of specifically for hypertension, but someone came along and said, hey, we need a diet for specifically for brain health. So they took the Mediterranean diet and the MIND diet, the Mediterranean diet and the DASH diet, which already had research to show that they are beneficial for our brains, and they combined them and kind of identified those foods, which we talked about earlier, that were specifically good for our brains, and they created this new diet called the MIND diet. So that is an acronym for the Mediterranean and DASH diet, intervention for neurodegenerative delay. So it's basically combining Mediterranean and DASH diet as an intervention to prevent or to delay this neurodegeneration that happens with Alzheimer's and dementia and things like that. So this was a diet developed in 2015. Again, it's just kind of a mashup of Mediterranean and DASH with an emphasis on those brightly colored fruits and vegetables like the leafy greens and the berries and the cherries. So they're gonna, if you were to follow a meal plan for the MIND diet, there's gonna be a heavy emphasis on those foods. But then also, similar plan to what you'd find with the Mediterranean diet or the DASH diet. So there's plenty of information out there. This has been very widely accepted in nutrition communities and also just, general healthcare communities. So there's a good bit of information about it out there on the internet. If you want, I can provide some of that information. If you're not internet savvy, I can help you kind of get some more information on that. So don't hesitate to ask. So let's see. Yeah, we talked about that. Okay, so on the flip side, as I flip my paper over, if you are one of your loved ones or a friend or someone is experiencing the unfortunate, onset of dementia, we've all had experience with it at some point, I'm sure. And, we've all known someone who's had it and has declined very rapidly, maybe very early in life. And then we've known other people where it's been a very slow progression. Maybe they were diagnosed later. It comes in all, forms and timelines, and, there's no way to predict these things. But, when we start to see the warning signs and we start to see that progression of the disease, there are a lot of barriers then that become things that can interfere with getting good nutrition. So we're going to talk a little bit about that really quickly. So some of the things you might start noticing at first is, we'll just say your loved one, who, because that's kind of all encompassing. They might start to become more messy at meal times, or you might notice they're getting frustrated or really agitated at meal times, or they're kind of just picking at their food or playing with it, pushing it around their plate. So sometimes that is just a sign that they might not know what to do with their meal. They might have forgotten how to, the sequencing that takes place in a mealtime, how to pick up a utensil and how to cut something up. So they're probably just feeling frustration, maybe a little embarrassment, or, they're just not able to remember, kind of the eating process. So it can be upsetting or agitating. So other problems or barriers could be they just have difficulty concentrating on, the task at hand, which is eating, which is kind of multi-step. It can be a little convoluted, like I said, to remember the sequencing of, eating and then stopping to take a drink and cutting up food, things like that. They might have a tendency to eat too quickly, or they might have a tendency to eat too slowly, or sometimes they might even get to the point where they're forgetting to chew and swallow. And then as things really start to progress, they might not even have the ability to chew and swallow. So we'll get to that. They also may just have difficulty using utensils. At first it might be more forgetfulness, and then it might actually be, a decline in their gross motor skills to use the utensils. Okay, so what are some things that we can do to combat some of these barriers or, problems associated with dementia? So one thing is to always try to provide a nice, calm environment. If you're eating at home, then maybe put some soothing music on, turn the TV off, whatever it is, a nice familiar environment nothing that's going to be too overstimulating. If you do go to a restaurant or the dining room here, maybe try to get a table, request a table that's kind of off on a corner, a smaller table that won't have as many people sitting there with you. And then also try to, like I said, make it a familiar environment. Try to set the place setting the same way. Have your loved one sit at the same spot at the table every time. If you are, if you're someone that goes to the dining room very often, maybe try to request the same table and have them sit at the same spot, just so there's a familiarity that doesn't cause confusion or anything like that. Also, it might be helpful to limit some of the menu options or meal options. So, it could be very overwhelming or frustrating when there's, pages and pages of choices. So maybe you can figure out a way to eliminate the menu process and pick out a few things and offer a few choices. So it's not, an overwhelming decision. Okay, then as things progress a little more and there is issues with the sequencing or just kind of forgetfulness of the eating process, you can provide kind of a visual cue to your loved ones. So you can very gently and, trying to protect dignity, etc., you can kind of verbalize the process that you're going through and, that you want your loved one to also do. So let's say, for example, buttering a piece of bread. You can say, you can pick up your bread and say, oh, look, I'm going to take my knife and, you get a piece of butter and put it on the bread, and you can kind of be verbalizing what you're doing or, kind of prompting your loved one to do the same thing so they can hear what you're saying and also see what you're doing, and then they can kind of imitate it as a cue, as a visual cue and a verbal cue. And then, you'll have to kind of figure out what works and what is most effective. But, you might also need to get to the point where you're kind of providing those verbal cues to chew your food or to swallow your food. So, you might just kind of say, don't forget to take a bite, or, don't forget to chew your food very thoroughly, things like that. Again, you don't want to embarrass your loved one, but you also want them to be successful. So communal dining, we were talking about kind of providing a calm environment, but also, an environment that's not very stimulating, but communal dining can actually be a huge benefit to someone with dementia because having other people around is more opportunities for those verbal cues. They can see everyone at their table eating, and then that kind of helps them to remember what they need to be doing. If you were to see dinner time, a meal time in Morning Glory here, our dementia care unit, we have a community table, and most of the residents are all sitting around a really large, long table. And that's just, it creates that nice family environment. But then it also provides those visual cues for our residents there. And it also provides an opportunity for our team members to kind of walk around and assist people as they need to and provide some more cueing, things like that. It might also be helpful to cut up your loved one's foods if they're having difficulty with their utensils, or to provide things that they can eat, what we call finger food, so things they can kind of eat without utensils. So like chicken tenders or French fries, sandwiches, things like that. So those are usually helpful. And then there's also the option of visiting an occupational therapist who can evaluate your loved one and make recommendations for maybe some sort of adaptive equipment or things like that. And also a speech language pathologist can help with cognition and can also help sometimes with those sequencing and things like that. So then as the disease really progresses and gets towards the later stages, like I was saying, as the disease process kind of takes its toll, it's not uncommon for people with dementia or Alzheimer's to just not have the ability to chew or swallow. So sometimes it's not having the cognition, but then also it could just be an actual physiological inability to chew or swallow. So then aspiration and choking becomes a risk and a concern. So it might be the case that you would need to modify the texture of the food. So grounding up meats and cooking vegetables and fruits really softly, providing things like gravy and sauces to keep the food moist so it goes down a little easier, creating smaller pieces of food. It might even get to the point where the food needs to just be consistently pureed. So those are all things that I can help kind of navigate, or a speech and language pathologist can also help to navigate, knowing the appropriate texture for the person's ability to chew or swallow at whatever stage they are. It's pretty common up in our healthcare that we might have to do that for our residents, but you also want to make sure you're maintaining good nutrition and calories and proteins when you're modifying textures. So it will also become important just to maintain weight, and so you may just kind of throw all nutrition lessons out the window, and if they're going to eat grilled cheese, if that's something they can have and that's a good calorie dense food, then just prepare yourself to make a lot of grilled cheeses and dish up some ice cream, and it's totally fine. It just becomes more of a quality of life issue towards the end. So it's not uncommon for me to say you can have ice cream at all 3 meals, and that's just fine. So anyway, so if you have any questions about if this is something that you're dealing with, and you have questions about nutrition as it relates to brain health, or someone who is actually in the process and progression of dementia, I'm happy to address those with you and help you find what's right for you or your loved one. So don't hesitate to contact me. So I hope that this has provided some good information, and that the rest of November continues to build awareness for this disease that is so prevalent amongst the population here at Cedarfield, and hopefully we can make some big strides to conquer Alzheimer's so that it's not as big of an issue in the future, because it truly is awful, and we would like to see our loved ones live out a good life, in their own mind, and to be the person that they always are. So anyway, so I think we are going to begin our holiday hiatus. There is just so much going on. It's hard to work this in. So I guess I will at this point just say a general happy holidays. Whatever you're celebrating, I hope you have a wonderful season with your loved ones and here at Cedarfield, and enjoy all the parties. I'm looking forward to seeing you all at some of the gatherings and the activities. So I hope that it is a very joyful time for you, and we will see you again in the new year. Bye-bye.